everybody, it's Mike Jeffers, ChicagoJazz.com, Chicago Jazz Magazine, and welcome to episode 128 of Talking Jazz. I am here. We're still in the headquarters here for Chicago Jazz Magazine. It's an expansive setup. I'm sure someday maybe I'll take you all for a nice walk, but I'm excited because we had to knock this thing out. Dani Rabin is here from Marbin.
Right.
And they're playing at Reggies, and now I've been digging their music. I'm very happy that we could squeeze this in. You guys are like on a tight schedule. You guys are traveling all over the place. Yeah. But first off, thanks for coming down here on such short notice, and we can actually plug this gig coming up at Reggies.
Thank you for having me. This is awesome. Love the space. Beautiful.
It's interesting, you know.
I love it.
It's kind of a hip thing. When people come down here, we're in an old warehouse building on the south side, but then when you come up into the different areas, it's kind of funky. It's cool, yeah, I think.
It's awesome. You even told me they used to have like cadavers in the morgue for World War II. It's like sick.
Well, they're not there anymore.
Yeah, they're not there anymore.
Thank God. Thank God. All right. We're not going to go down that wormhole right now.
Okay.
But we are going to go down the wormhole. So, Marbin, you guys have been around for over 10 years, maybe?
Yeah.
Right, just about that?
Our first album was 2009.
Okay. Yeah. So right around 10 years. You guys are playing Friday night, March 15th at Reggies, right there in the South Loop, 2105 South State Street.
That's right.
In Chicago, 8 p.m. Now, we love Reggies here. I mean, Robbie's an incredible guy that owns the place, and he always brings in a lot of eclectic music. And you guys have such a mixture of sounds, a mixture of genres mixed together. I mean, you guys, on your website, I think it says that progressive jazz and rock style music, but I would say that there's a lot more into it, obviously. Yeah. Why don't we talk a little bit about the gig at Reggies, and are you guys touring on a new album, or what can people expect to hear that night?
So we always, the way we run things with Marbin is that we always write a new batch of music, take it on the road, and then after about a year of playing it, we make an album, and then we throw out those tunes and write a new batch. So It's kind of like the opposite process of most musicians, because you know most musicians now get together, write something in the studio, and then they go to promote that album, and we just don't do that. Mainly because for us, it always made sense that by the time we make an album, we really want to have it be some sort of summary of some sort of process that happened with the tunes, and the tunes keep changing. Like we talk a lot to each other in the van after gigs, and we're like, that part didn't work, that chord sucks there. So it's like the tunes keep morphing for a few months. And also when you're playing improvised music, it's like it's tricky to like decide what version of the song goes on a record, right? So you gotta really exhaust the structure and improvise on it so much to where things take shape, and then you're able to play some sort of kind of archetypal thing that summarizes your ideas, and it's passes the filter of your ears, because you hear yourself play every night. And
the thing that it reminds me of is that, I mean, like the Grateful Dead, right? Or any of the jam bands, they do that. They go out, they play a million shows, and then they might go in and record something.
Well, Sinatra did it too.
Sure.
And Louis Armstrong, I think it was up till maybe 70s, I think that was the MO, right? It's like, how many times did Louis Armstrong probably play like La Vie en Rose or All of Me before he'd put it down? Like thousands, right? Every night.
Right.
So the studio would be a place where people capture something that they've developed rather than engineer it. And I think that's kind of a return to that mentality.
Well, that's also a really organic way of doing it. And when you listen to the music, if you haven't already heard the music, and of course they can get all the music, facebook.com/Marbin Music.
I like how you do things.
Yeah, you like that. Right? I slide them in, man. I got good segues happening here. Yeah. And of course, MarbinMusic.com. They've got all the tour dates. You guys are all over the country here coming up very soon. Yeah. But, your stuff is very technique driven, and then improvised over that. So it's like it's got the best of both worlds, where it's like super intense technique stuff happening, and then a lot of improvisation. So did you guys specifically start writing this stuff, maybe even back in the day when you first started getting together? I mean, with that concept behind it, or was that an organic process that happened as far as that went?
Well, with the chops thing, I think me and Dani, the thing that we really had in common when we listened to people, right? It's like whether it was on any instrument, like for me, when I listened to drummers, it was always like Dennis Chambers, Buddy Rich. Yeah. And there was kind of this thing about people that pack the punch with their playing, right? That like the feeling of playing Charlie Parker, it's just like that thing's like, wow, this fucker is great.
Yeah.
Right? It's like just not like this is like soothing. It's it's the difference between like, I don't know, some sort of tender flirtation with music than hardcore porn. I was always like, just like, give it to me. Like I want, and it's like
that's the first time that's ever been referenced here on Talking Jazz. I love it. I love it.
But that's what I'm saying. It's like I wanted to have some sort of intense, total kind of experience with music, and the people that would just drive it all the way were always the people that appealed to me, and that was the person I wanted to become. And for Dani, it was that. We're from Israel. Our in Hebrew we say la vie barosh. We always say, that's like the phrase literally means to like hit him in the head, right? To club him.
Yeah.
And that was like the goal. Like with the music, it's to do something that's not like just pretty. It was just like it needs to be overwhelming. And I guess in a sense, I think an individual, like an artist, can give to somebody else something that's as deep as the experience that they perceive, right? So it's like you have some sort of like intimate goosebump moment with whoever, whether that's like, a Max Roach or a Dennis Chambers or whoever as a drummer, and then you feel a certain way, and that kind of defines the limit of what you can give. You can't see any farther or any deeper than your scope. Right.
Well, and it's interesting that you brought that up, that you're from Israel and that you're thinking of it, a certain way. I mean, to me, it's not that you're from Israel, but the fact that like Oznoi is from Israel, right? And once you said that, it's like he's got kind of that aggressive style. I think of your style as like an aggressive, creative style, which I love. And it really actually sounds more like something that you might hear in New York rather than coming out of Chicago. How did you guys? Did you live in New York, or how'd you end up in Chicago?
That was just random. When me and Dani met in Israel before, like 2 years before we moved here, and we had like a little band there. I went to Berkeley, and I came to Israel with a drummer from here, and we started.
So you went from Israel, you went to Berkeley, and then went back to Israel.
Yeah, back to Israel for a summer with the drummer, and that's how we met Dani there, and we started playing together, and then we came back here with that drummer to kind of start a career, and our relationship with that drummer fell apart like pretty much immediately, and the two of us were just kind of like stranded here, like we don't know.
Was he from Chicago?
The drummer was.
The drummer was. So that's how you ended up in Chicago,
and then we followed him, and then he cut his ties, and we were just here like, I guess we have to figure this thing out, So we started making albums, eventually started touring, but the fusion style. I mean, it's the way, I don't know, like. It seems to me like people just do the best with what they have, right? And that's what we had in our mind. Like when you write a song, what you're really doing is asking yourself, what is good music right now? What is the best version of that I can aspire to in this moment? Somehow in my mind, it had to do with having drums, having electric bass, to support that guitar sound. Saxophone was there because of Dani, and we just wrote the songs that seemed good to us.
With the Berkeley aspect of it, I mean, how long were you at Berkeley?
I'm the one who graduated.
You're the guy. I know it. I was like, wait a minute. And that's a great way to say it too, because I've never heard of anybody actually graduating. Congratulations.
Thank you. It was boring.
And every time now you play a gig, you have to present your diploma, right? Otherwise, you can't get the gig, right?
I actually got rejected from Guitar Center.
You did?
After I moved here, and I was desperate for money, and I applied, and I showed them my Berkeley degree.
Yeah, like they would be impressed.
And they were like, "No, like we're okay." And I was like, "Oh."
They don't want somebody like you walking in there. You're gonna make them all look bad. What's the matter with you? You're gonna have to go forget about 10% of that and then come back.
Yeah,
man. So when you were at Berkeley, I mean, that's a heavy duty melting pot of musicians from all over the place.
I wasn't doing good melting.
No?
I melted at a very high temperature. It was not enough. I was not blending.
So was it you were just kind of sticking, because when you're there, I mean, there's fusion guys, there's straight ahead guys, there's all these different guys. I mean, were you just kind of focused on just kind of playing your stuff and figuring out your style?
I went towards avant-garde when I was there, and I think it was a self-defense mechanism for not knowing how to play jazz at the time and being, people were just being kind of dickish, like some jazz people,
vibing you the whole time.
So jazz people can do that. I do that to people now, but back then I didn't know how to play
and it's
jazz.
Okay now.
Yeah, once you know harmony and you can play in time, you're totally good. But you have to come up with creative ways of defending yourself before. Now, because this whole postmodernist thing now, they didn't know that's happening. It started then, really.
Yeah.
And I recognized it immediately. And these people could just play over changes, but if you took a match and put it between the strings of the guitar and started making these weird sounds, then they couldn't say anything to you because that was supposed to be even hipper.
Oh yeah,
because of the whole. So I was just seeing the hierarchy and just maneuvering right above it by playing with Legos, throwing marbles at the guitar.
Really?
It was wonderful.
And you graduated?
I played the guitar night, which is the senior recital. I was like the avant-garde act. I had this umbrella and I'd open and close it on the strings of my guitar. People just like... It was hilarious. I realized the moment I went in there that this game of jazz, I came to study it.
Right.
But it's like going to chess school, but there's no consensus on how the pieces move. So some people are playing chess, some people are taking the same pieces playing checkers, some people are just throwing them at each other.
Yeah.
So I was one of the ones that was just chucking the queens. Free jazz, hiding behind it.
Right. I mean, and I think that's part of the thing that I think a lot of, any musician, when they look at some of the free jazz stuff, and now, with me running the magazine and all that stuff, I mean, I get to hear a lot of stuff, right? And I've talked to a lot of people that are innovators in the free jazz world, but they can all play really well too. But it's interesting when you talk to them, they have a concept behind of why they're doing it, right? And what they're doing. I remember talking to Jack DeJohnette about it. I mean, there's a concept behind what they're doing. A lot of them call it spontaneous composition. But then there's a other side of it where they don't really know what they're doing, but they figure if they just do some stuff and look really kind of cool, that's the other side of it. And after reading and watching and looking at all this stuff for years and years and years and years, you can hear if they're know what they're doing, because there's a super art form to that, or if they kind of are schlepping through it.
I agree.
And you probably really can talk to that because you were...
Well, at the time, I took myself very seriously.
Yeah.
But looking back, I know inside me where it came from. It was this thing. It wasn't the kind of music I wanted to play.
Right.
But in a way, I could see how it's played, and I felt like a part of that world in some way, and it was easier.
Right.
So yeah, I was one of the ones that was faking it, but very quickly after that, I realized, that what I want to do is write music, have a band, which is an organization that plays it, and go out and play it for people as often as possible.
So when you guys got to town, I mean, how did you end up getting your sound? I mean, you guys were you guys living together and then just shedding constantly all the time, playing together?
Yeah, I mean, we played shows nonstop in Chicago for a while.
Yeah.
Nobody ever came out to them because that's what happens. Even if Paul Simon played a show every night in Chicago, after a while,
was it just you and Dani? I mean, just doing duo stuff? So
we started as a duo. Yeah. I was doing a lot of looping and prepared guitar, which was remnants from my free jazz. Actually, our first album and our second album has a ton of guitar texture, which is what I took away from that whole experience with avant-garde, because I was always into texture and people like Fred Frith and like the English improvisers. And the fusion side started emerging a little bit later. We also met Paul Wardico.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And we made an album with him. He took us to play with his band. We just crashed his house.
Which album did you guys do?
Impressions of the City.
Oh, yeah. Okay, sure.
So it was, he called it the Mid-East-Midwest Alliance.
Oh, you guys are
we're the Mid-East.
I remember talking to him, and he was bragging about these young guys that are just killing
We're not young anymore.
playing their asses off. Mike, you got to hear these guys. You got to hear that. I'm like, all right, Paul. Because he says that about a lot of people. I'm like, come on, man. He's like, I'm serious. I'm like, okay.
Well, what happened was we moved here, and we always loved Metheny Group.
Oh, okay.
We were huge.
So he's the perfect guy to go follow around.
Yeah. Well, first of all, we thought he's like this smooth guy who just plays a flat ride. We didn't know he plays like avant-garde and all this stuff. So anyway, we call him up on the phone. We were here like 3 months. And I'm like,
well, you guys
like,
needed a drummer.
Well, exactly. So I'm like, Paul, can I book a lesson with you? And he's like, sure. And he just puts a date down like a month ahead.
Yeah.
He thought I was a drummer, so it's like me and Danny come to his house, and we have like a truck full of gear, and we just load out on his lawn. He's just like, what are you guys doing? Like, what's going on? And he's like, I can see in his eyes, like panicked. He's expecting like the worst, right?
Oh, yeah, he's like, and what did I hire a rock band for this afternoon?
I set up like a stereo thing with like all these pedal boards. Danny has a saxophone rig at the time.
And he's probably walking around all nervous.
We're in his basement, and we just started playing like duo stuff for him, and he's like, oh, it's great. I like it. I really like it. It's like, you guys want to like join my band? Like, yeah, the trio.
Like
and we made it a quintet. Yeah, that's Paul. So we made that one record for
Chicago Sessions.
Nick Ipers, yeah.
Yep.
And I was thinking we were going to make a Matheny record, and I was very excited. But we start playing, and like I start playing like this chord thing, and he's like, it sounds like Muzak. Can we improvise? Let's improvise, guys. And we're like, okay. So it's like we just started improvising, and yeah, that became that. But he also played on our second album on Breaking the Cycle, and and him and Steve Rodby, other dude from Matheny Group, for those of you who don't know him, and he also played on the last chapter of Dreaming, our third album. And then after that, it was pretty clear to us that we can't take a 60-year-old dude on the road to play bars. He's done that already in the 70s.
He's not interested.
Yeah,
in
he's not
that.
interested. So we had to figure out our own shit.
Especially a dude that's won 7 Grammys and has toured the world and sold out arenas. It's like playing at some bar in
it's
St.
not a lateral move. You're correct.
He hasn't gotten to that point, but he's got to start again. But just having that experience with Steve and Paul, that had to really help to shape your whole.
We thought it would. It was still hard as shit.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it was.
Not from a gig standpoint, but from a music standpoint. Like, did you learn a lot from working with those guys?
Yeah. From Paul, I learned something about. I never saw a guy do less preparation for studio work and then kill it so hard. It was he literally never heard the tracks before.
Yeah.
We were drinking wine and eating pizza, and he was like listening to our music isn't simple. He's listening to it once, and then he went in and just crushed it. Like, wouldn't even do like a second take, just be like, that one's good. And we're like, yeah, it was. Because for me, you know, if I were in that situation, which I would never be in because I prepare, right? But if I was listening to the song, I wouldn't be able to really hear it because I'd think about what I would do constantly.
Yep.
You know, so that's kind of like you're in a moving car, and I just reach out the window and try to grab a tree, like tear my arm off and crash the car, right? And he trusts himself so much, and he has so much experience that he can actually listen to the whole thing in a relaxed way, hear the form, hear everything without grabbing for ideas,
right?
And then just go in and remember. So to me, that was really mind-blowing about him, about how he can listen and how he can trust himself and have the confidence and the relaxation to crush it. And he did crush it. And with Steve, I learned that bassists are bassists. You know? I don't know, who cares?
Who cares?
He's great. You know, he sounds great.
Oh yeah,
he
makes
dude, he makes low notes.
All right, that's it. You got to come back for a separate. We got to talk about people. I love this. All right. All right. So you guys started touring and started doing stuff. Now, one of the things that I find fascinating, because every time I'm talking to somebody that's writing original music and is getting it out there outside of Chicago, I mean, you know, once you get established in Chicago, you can essentially probably at least guarantee yourself that you're going to be able to get some steady places every month or a couple times a month or whatever it is. But getting out of Chicago, making it affordable and making it like so that you can do that is another whole story. Oh, yeah. How did you, I mean, just looking over your schedule now, I mean, you're going to Springfield, you're going to St. Louis or Missouri somewhere, and then you're in Texas, and then I mean, you are out until like June.
We play about between 200 to 250 dates a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you're looping them all together, I would imagine. What do? You go out for a couple of weeks, come back? Or how does that?
Usually between 3 and 8 weeks is a tour. And
how's that going to work when now that Danny has a kid? How's that?
he's still book. He does all the booking, so I see the dates just keep coming in. So I guess
a lot of FaceTime, I guess.
Yeah,
with the kid?
not going for Dad of the Year. I don't know.
It doesn't seem that way.
Yeah.
But so you guys are doing all that stuff. I mean, are these a lot of places that you guys have been over and over and over? So now you're developing a crowd.
We've been
right?
everywhere.
That's kind of the key, probably, right?
Well, I mean, for people listening, starting out and wondering how it works, like when they tell you pay your dues, you gotta pay a lot of those dues. So it's like we started off playing for literally the bartender. Yeah. Like we would drive 8-9 hours a day, get to a bar in Oklahoma and in Mississippi, looked like the bar downstairs from where you live, you know.
Right.
And like the feeling was like you walk in, you start setting up. There's no PA. Most of the times, like 5 times a week, they would forget that they booked us. They'd have to like make phone. There's a band here, you know, and they want to play. You still want to play, yeah? And then there's like 2 people sitting in the bar, and then you start playing, and they just turn their heads, like, and start listening to like, you know, us slamming Fusion.
Yeah.
For these people in the middle of the South that just happened to be in the bar. Nobody knew anything about us. You can't market yourself before people know who you are.
Right.
It's like, Marbin's coming. What's Marbin? You know, like, you know. So then these people started stumbling towards us like, you boys sound like Mahavishnu. I'm like, what?
What? In the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, like what? And then we realized that these people that called all these states flyover states were the reason that they were flyover states. There's like this stigma inside jazz musicians' minds that there are only like 3 or 4 markets in the States, but there are people here are identical. They have the same iPhone, they watch the same YouTube, they might have a different accent. They're like, not to say that they're all great, we're all the same like conglomerate of dumbass everywhere. Nobody knows shit. There's a background in jazz that's dispersed pretty evenly, and that's a whole myth. Now, the other thing that happened was in 2012, we had the opportunity to open for Scott Henderson's band with Mike Clark and Jeff Berlin, and then we did a long run with Alan Holdsworth's band.
Oh, that's going to help a lot to get that exposure out there, right?
Well, that didn't. The tour after that was the hardest time of our life because the exposure didn't really help. We were playing theaters. We were playing like 300 to 500 people a day. But what we did see was money.
Yeah.
Because we needed. The way, Alan had it's not a secret, he had a little bit of a drinking problem. Mm-hmm. So I had to handle all the money deposits, so everything would be okay.
Got weird.
But I got to see how much money it was. I never counted. I didn't think. I was just a child in my mind before then. But then I was like, wait a second. So if he's selling tickets for $50, $30 to $50, and there's 500 people, you do the math, right? So it's like thousands and thousands of dollars. Right. That they were pocketing every night. So a tour was a very profitable thing. And then I just realized even if our goal was to play theaters, that's very sustainable. And we can do this. And there is the audience in all these places. He wouldn't go to very small markets, but he still went to like Dayton, Ohio.
Sure,
towns, right? So after that, we had a glimmer of of the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, you could do this possibly.
Yeah, it was viable. And and then just what happened after that was we were touring and touring and touring, and nobody would show up. And this is up until we put out really our 5th album, Aggressive Hippies. We made a live album. Not a lot of people came. And then what happened is we made 2 videos that went very viral very quickly, which is very funny, actually. What happened with those videos, we had our lineup at the time had John Lawler and Greg Essig on drums. Greg Essig on drums, John Lawler on bass. This was already like our 3rd lineup. And we made this, we finished the tour. Our last show was actually opening up for Scott Henderson at Reggies.
Okay.
And our last show was supposed to be a festival in Missouri, but a night before we were here, and both of them quit on us a night before this festival, right? So
great.
Yeah, they just were like, we're done with this. It was hard. It was hard times.
Right,
we were driving a lot. Not a lot of people would show up. We also didn't get along personally. Anyway, me and Danny panicked. We drove by ourselves, played a gypsy jazz duo show instead of a Marbin show, which is not at all the same.
Right.
For this festival in, I think it was Jefferson City, Missouri. And drove back, and then we told them, it's like, like, okay, this is not like, it's not cool what you did to us. Like, we need to get together, at least like finish the stuff we have on the books, which is doing one masterclass and one video shoot.
Yeah.
So they did this video, right? And when they were already out of the band, and those two videos, the moment we put them up, just got to hundreds of thousands of people.
Wow.
Just like spread,
Boom.
like started like pow, pow, pow. Like we put them on Facebook, nothing special, no
Right.
adding money, no promoting. But we had about, at that time, we were working for 5 years, just all the time. And we had like something like 11, 12,000 fans that were diehards.
Yeah. So they share this
So
thing
they
out.
shared it, and it got pushed and pushed, and it just started this thing. And all of a sudden, things became slightly easier.
Right.
And then we started touring, getting higher profile gigs. You keep doing the rounds, making more content, and now with Facebook, it's that really took off for us.
Oh yeah. Well, and that's probably the key, because when you're able to get out, and now you got the reach on social media, and you guys are always on social media pushing it out there. You're always in contact with your fans. The thing that I like too, where are you guys shooting the videos? Because that's in like a studio or something, right?
There's a few of them. So the last couple of batches we did it in Toledo, Toledo, Ohio, a place called Stone Soup Studio, and then the first ones that got kind of pushed out were in King Size Studio in Chicago.
Okay. But that's the key, I think, is because you guys are able to drop videos consistently, right?
Well, it's the key now, but that's the thing. You can't repeat any success story twice.
Right.
And that's the thing. I think the formula isn't so much to mimic the Facebook thing, because the algorithms keep changing too. If you do it now, you wouldn't have the reach because they want you to pay for everything.
Right.
We were at this point in time where it was possible. So for somebody who's coming up now who wants to somehow break it, you don't repeat somebody else's formula, you repeat their ethic.
Right.
So you just need to work very hard. Don't make any stupid decisions with money, meaning like don't put yourself in a situation where you're throwing money in the air hoping it will solve your problems. Only spend what you can afford, and keep making things, and keep being, with your finger on the pulse, and just ask yourself, what's the new platform? I mean, right now it seems like Instagram and stuff like that is the new thing, but for us it wouldn't work, because 1 minute videos, it's not enough.
59 seconds, it's over.
For us, it's not enough to deliver our kind of content. So you got to ask yourself, like, also find an idiom that somehow fits, but understand that no success stories repeat twice.
Right.
So,
well, and that's the thing that I think a lot of young musicians that we're talking to, or older musicians, you got to think of this as a business.
Oh yeah.
Because if you ran a business, not a musician, but you ran a business, you would look at it and say, profit and loss, what's the strategy? How am I going to build this somewhere? Should I give somebody $5,000 just to get played on the radio or something? Is that going to be what I really want to have happen? Sure. Or do I really actually want to have gigs? Or there's a lot of factors that have to go into just thinking about music as a business. And it's not just saying, well, that gig doesn't pay enough, so I'm not going to do it. Maybe that gig doesn't pay enough, but is there a benefit for you playing it because maybe it's in between two other gigs? Maybe you're going to reach an audience that you're not, or maybe you're going to shoot some video or something and just get something out of it that you can then drop to expand out your audience. It's all those little things.
I think that's absolutely correct. I think also the dangerous part of it, because us musicians are not known for our intellect.
Speak for yourself. Come on.
But a dumbass conclusion that you can draw when you're trying to make a business is that you start fucking with the product too much. Right. And this is the real danger, because once you start thinking it's like, oh, people don't like fusion, right? Or oh, people don't like jazz anymore, I need to like sneak my solos into a rock song, right? Or I need to dress up, or I need to do this. You get into this really dangerous territory where why are you in this, right? So it's a real delicate balance between making something of quality that comes from some sort of place of integrity and sincerity, and just trying to do something good, and also not be so presumptuous to think that like you can somehow simplify what you're doing into some sort of pop that's relevant for everybody if you only play less complex music. With jazz, that a lot of times it's a danger. It's like, oh, I can really play bebop, but what I'm really going to do is just hip hop with some lines over it. Right. And then you just make shit that nobody wants to hear because it sucks.
And you don't want to hear it either because you're not totally into it.
Yeah. So like, if you're not doing something that has, I don't know what to call it, for lack of a better word, balls. Like if it doesn't excite you to where you want to get up there and play, it's a platform in jazz for you to like combust, right? To be like play really fiery. And you don't get off on it, then nobody will.
Right.
And that's the point.
That's the whole point of everything, right?
Yeah.
I mean, no matter what you're doing, even if you're not a musician, if you're doing something you hate, you are not going to be excited about getting up.
And nobody is.
Right.
And the process doesn't work. No, we don't need any more like background music.
Right.
There's enough of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk a little bit more about Reggies. So Reggies coming up Friday, March 15th,
That's
8
right.
p.m. show. You guys are playing, but then you also have a very special guest that opens for you. And
Yeah,
apparently, he's like the basketball team that the Harlem Globetrotters brings to every single.
Yeah, he travels
stadium.
with us in the van. He has a lot of muscle. Also working against the body fat. He's not so good at cutting. He's very good at bulking. He looks like the first guy that gets his ass kicked in a Steven Seagal movie. It's like defending the boss, you know.
But he opens up for you at every show because you bring him with to every show.
We call him our indefinite opener. Yeah, we call him Bad Ben. Ben De Laurentiis. He's a singer-songwriter.
Yep.
It's very easy. He plays like a 10, 15-minute set. We love it.
And then you guys come out and kill it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So they can get all the information at, is it reggieschicago.com, I think?
Could be.
I know that it's on facebook.com/Marbin Music.
Yes.
And also marbinmusic.com has a link over there too. And that's all happening this Friday. Man, I'm so glad you stopped down. And this was a great discussion. I got to have you back because we've got a lot of other stuff we got to talk about.
Sure.
Actually,
Anytime.
I should have you and Wertico on here sometime.
That'd be awesome. We just did like I just went to his house and interviewed him for our page.
You?
Yeah.
Oh, man. You know, I did an interview with him when I had one of my first radio shows, and the stories he can tell, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, we're the opposite kind of person because I'm pretty direct and negative, and he's very like positive and accepting, you know, so it was very hard for me to like not drag him into like my world of shit.
Suck him in. Yeah. Well, you didn't suck me in. I just agree with you. So that's what I do here on the show. I just agree with people.
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks for coming in, Danny. And of course, Friday, March 15th, Reggies in Chicago, right there on State Street, 2105 South State, facebook.com, Marbin Music, and it's up on chicagojazz.com as well. And as I always end the show, hopefully, Danny, we'll see you on March 15th or somewhere between now and the rest of the year because you are out on tour everywhere.
Yeah. We play like once a year in Chicago, so come to this one.
Yeah, so this is the one to come to. And then hopefully maybe I'll see you on the 15th at their show or somewhere else. But if I don't, hopefully I will see you somewhere out on the scene.